Okay, so the process I'm going to take you through tonight is probably a bit different to anything that you've come across before. Can you also see me on the screen there anywhere, or have I disappeared?
You're there.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a brief intro in terms of where I've come from and what leads me to speaking to you here today. So my original qualifications are in marketing. So I graduated from the University of Otago another lifetime ago with a Master of Commerce degree. And then after having kids, decided I didn't want to do the corporate stuff, and so became a business coach. So I was an award-winning business coach with Action International for a while. One of the most fun jobs I've ever had was actually as a general manager for a business incubator, and I set up an entrepreneur development program there. So a lot of the concepts that I'm sharing tonight come from the entrepreneurial method that we taught in the entrepreneur development program, and also from the experience I've had in the interim. I've also been a social entrepreneur, owned businesses in half of the states, Australia and New Zealand, with a couple of business partners running speaking events and trainings for social entrepreneurs, which are entrepreneurs that basically want to do good and want to help each other do good. So that was a very fun part of my life, traveling around the world doing that. Just before COVID hit, I decided to up and leave and travel as a digital nomad for essentially 2 years. And that really gave me a lot of insight into the digital world and the opportunities there. So I was connecting with cryptocurrency traders and people with e-commerce businesses and people that were working remotely, and some had achieved some fantastic things. And I'm going to share one of those stories tonight. Been a speaker talking about culture change and cultures for innovation. I've actually run some e-commerce businesses myself. The best one that I had the most fun with, the most success with, was a natural skincare line that I was selling online. And most recently, like just in the last few months since ditching the corporate world again, I've set up the SME Collective, which is intended to be a really affordable way to get business owners helping business owners, and kind of replicate what I was doing in the social entrepreneurship, but locally, because I did love that world so much. So there's where I'm coming from. There's the background that hopefully I can bring some value to you tonight. In terms of our objectives, the objectives of this session are to give you the tools so that you can come up with the bullseye. What's that business that's going to give you the fulfillment that you're looking for, not just the financial reward, but a fulfilling life as well, because it sounds like at least a couple of you have come from corporate and selling your time for dollars and not necessarily enjoying the environment. So fulfillment is a big thing about what drives me in terms of a business. So helping you get clear on what's your vision or intention around that. How do you find your sweet spot? There's a process called Effectuation, which I'm going to talk to you about, otherwise known as the Entrepreneurial Method, which is by far the best way, and it's proven actually through the research done internationally that it's the best way to get a business up and going that achieves remarkable things that you never intended or dreamed of sometimes. And then once we've got that foundation of who are we and what do we got and what do we want and all of those sort of things, then we start looking at, well, what's the opportunity? What are the market trends, the needs, the wants, and how do we validate all of that? And at the very end, I'm going to give you a special bonus. You may or may not already have come across it. Most people in business haven't, and that's called the business chassis. And I'm going to cover that tonight because I think it's a very good foundation if you're looking at starting a business, to be able to use the calculator to go back and go, what's possible, what's not? Can I see that this could actually work in the format that it needs to? And if you stay till the end, I'll send you all of the slides, including the workbook in there as well, for you to go through in your own time and do. So any questions around that? All good?
All good.
All good. So the very first place to start is, what do you want? It sounds like such a broad question, but there's this wonderful part of our brain called the reticular activating system that once we have absolute clarity around what we want, the subconscious mind starts setting about trying to find it for us. So a lot of the work actually happens in the background. So if I were to say to you all now, how clear are you on what you want from a business? Could you write it down in a succinct sentence? What would you say? Would it be a yes, no, or I'm a little bit there?
No, but have ideas off and on.
Yeah. Rudy?
It's more really the money situation, to be honest. I mean, that's the most important thing. I don't want to go backwards.
Yeah.
Where I'm going now.
Yeah.
And also, it's more risk owning your business, right? So if you're going to make the switch from working for an employer and be getting paid so much, or if there's a high risk owning a business, there needs to be a premium over it. So it needs to make financial sense, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Rick, how clear are you on what you want from a business?
Not very at all.
Okay.
When I started out, I was a bit of a shotgun approach with all of what I had to offer, but I didn't take into account whether there may be a product or something to offer or something like that. So that's why I've generally just offered my time.
Okay. So here are some of the questions, and there's obviously more, but these are good foundations to start with, and you should at least be able to answer these questions. To your point, Rudy, how much money do you want to make? Most of us aren't happy going backwards. Do you want to work by yourself or in a team? Do you want immediate income, or are you happy to take time to build something? Do you want passive and or recurring revenue? I'm assuming that you know what passive and recurring revenue is, but just in case, passive is the money that comes in when you're sleeping, and recurring revenue is like the subscriptions where somebody's paying you automatically every month or every fortnight or whenever it is, that you know where your next dollars are coming from. What hours are you happy working? Why do you want to go into business for yourself? For me, initially, I was just sick of the corporate world, and I wanted to spend more time with my children, but that's changed over time. What work do you actually want to do? What contribution or difference do you want to make to others, and who might those others be? Where do you want to work from? Do you want to be able to travel around, like I did, traveling through Slovenia and Italy and Portugal, making money as I went? Do you want to happy working from home? Do you want to travel around a bit? What's your clarity there? Do you want to build something that you can sell? What experiences do you want to have along the way through your business ownership? And what are you willing to risk or invest? So this process of deciding what business to start starts with you, rather than looking at the outside world. It's saying, what do I want? Here's a form that you'll get that you can go through. We won't go through it in a lot of detail right now, but it's just breaking up in those questions that I mentioned beforehand into this is my profile of my ideal business. These are my must-haves. These are my nice-to-haves. This is what I absolutely don't want and want to avoid. And what's my level of belief that this is possible for me out of 10? Now, the reason I throw what's my level of belief in there is because it's all very well to dream, but if we actually put something in there in terms of what we want and our ideal, that our subconscious is saying there's no way in high heaven that that's possible, you'll self-sabotage and you're just dreaming. You're not going to get anywhere. So it's good when you're deciding what to put in there as a what you want as something that's a stretch, but you do actually believe it's possible. So I've put a little example off to the side. My must-haves, this is almost an example of where I was a few years ago. I want to make 200,000 per annum, working no more than 30 hours per week, and I wanted to be at home for my children after school each day. I wanted an income that was scalable, so not entirely focused on exchanging time for dollars, and ideally recurring revenue as well. One of the businesses I had at one point, I owned a franchise, which was very, very stock and inventory intensive. And every month I saw the value of my stock depreciating, and the money going to the finance company going up, and it left me with knots in my stomach. The 20th of the month, I hadn't slept for a week, and I just never ever want to go there again. So that's in the must-haves now in terms of low risk. Don't want to do that again. And in terms of the nice to haves, I'd like to be able to take 8 weeks of holidays per year. Don't want to employ staff. I want to work alone, be stuck in an office, and I'd really like to meet interesting people. So I don't want to be stuck in an office again, double up there. So that's kind of where I was a few years ago, just to give you a little bit of an example. So you will get this sent to you so you can go through and fill that out for you in your own time. What I do suggest is that you don't try and do it all at once. It's kind of the sort of thing that you sit down for a few minutes when you've got some ideas, and then revisit it a couple of days later when you've got some more ideas, and fill it out over time. Let your subconscious have some time to work through some of it. So, sweet spot. What is the sweet spot for you? Now, the sweet spot, apart from being the most fulfilling business for you, is probably also going to be where you're going to experience the most success with the least amount of friction or resistance. And it just happens to overlay with a Japanese concept which stands for reason for being, called Ikigai. So that's where this concept comes from. A lot of people talk about work-life balance. I hope you excuse me, but I actually think that that's bullshit. Work and life are not separate, they are integrated. So we really need to have a business that is serving our life, not something that we're doing something we hate for 5 days a week so that we can live 2 days a week. And I think the principle of Ikigai fits very well with that, because we've got 7 days a week, all of us, and it would be nice if we're using that to the best of our ability every day and have fun doing it. So that's the principle of Ikigai. So here again are some notes to work through in your workbook in your own time. So the principles of passion, that was one of the circles that we just covered there. What do you enjoy doing? And when time flies, what are you typically doing? So that's about flow. And I don't know if you know much about flow state, but it's that time when you sit down to do something, say at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you lift your head up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you have no idea where the time has gone. That's a good indication that you've been in flow state. And if you can think about the times that you've been doing that, that's a good sign that you're in a space of passion, or in a space that is your sweet spot. Another question around passion: who do I most enjoy working with? What type of people? Moving on to the next part of Ikigai is the mission focus. What does the world need? What does your community or a group that you care about need? One of the reasons that's so important, and people talk about purpose, is because if you launch a business that doesn't fit with some kind of purpose of you, when things get tough, you're going to ditch it. So if you want something that you're going to stick with, it pays to have some emotional connection to it. Not totally, but it pays to have something that allows you to be courageous and have some stickability when otherwise you might not. And another aspect to mission is what people and types of people do you most enjoy working with as well there. So that's 2 aspects of the Ikigai taken care of. The next one is vocation. So write a list of what are all the things that you could possibly do that you could be paid for. And then a good thing to put beside each of those things is what's the potential value of each of those things. Like I could probably go and do some marketing for someone and be paid $50 an hour, or I could set up an online course which is sold internationally and be making $1,000 an hour. So think about what are the things I could do that I could be paid for, and what's the level of payment that I might actually be able to get for each of those as well. The next section is profession or ability. What are you actually good at? What are the skills that you've got? What comes naturally to you? What have you developed over years in terms of experience that you could turn into something that you might be able to sell? So that's the quadrants of the Ikigai taken care of. I mentioned before about the entrepreneurial method. That's the thing I'm going to focus on now. And the reason I'm going to focus on it now is because the entrepreneurial method is specifically designed for uncertain and unpredictable times, and when you don't want to be limited in terms of what you can do. So the best way that I can explain the difference between sort of the standard way of deciding what business to build and how you build it, and the entrepreneurial method way, is to think about cooking a meal. It's like going, picking up a recipe in the first situation. This is what they teach in business school, is the traditional way of deciding what to do and how to do it. It's like deciding what you're going to cook for dinner, looking at the recipe, following the instructions, going out and getting all of the ingredients, making sure that you've got everything you need to cook it and blend it and do everything just the way that they say in terms of the instructions. And by the end of it, hopefully you've got something that looks and tastes like the recipe indicates. That's the traditional method. But if the oven breaks, or if all of a sudden maybe your eggs or your milk is off or something like that, you're stuck. So what that means in terms of business is, if you decide there's a very specific business that you're going to build and you're going to do it in a very specific way, and you decide you need to go out and get this resource and this resource and this resource, you might be delaying the start time. You know, it might take 6 months, 12 months, 2 years to actually get your ducks in a row. You're probably going to have some waste. And if the world changes, you're going to be too slow to react. So the old way of building business and deciding what you do doesn't fit in this rapidly changing environment that we're working in today. The counter to that is like a chef going into the kitchen and looking around at, what have I got? Looking in the pantry, in the fridge, checking out the oven, what dishes have I got? Now, if I combine all of that together, what is the most optimal way to use those? What's the best dish that I could possibly come up with? And if something goes wrong in the process, they'll adapt and change it, and something entirely different might end up on the table that night. So this method is very, very good for uncertainty and unpredictability. It means that you can start right now. You can start small with what you've got, no need to delay. There is no wastage. You don't need to predict the future, as you can control it, and you're willing to adapt. You might have an intention of what you want your business to do for you, but you're willing for it to adapt within that intention. So where you get to in terms of a business may not be whatever you pictured at the beginning. This process was actually identified out of a study done in Darden University in the United States back in the late 90s, where they studied 1,700 entrepreneurs, and they were all successful, and some had achieved miraculous things and some just standard levels of success. And they looked at, well, what is it that was the differentiator between those that had achieved the remarkable and those that had achieved the average? And it was this entrepreneurial method, which they've now codified and some people teach. So one of the examples of the entrepreneurial method is U-Haul. I don't know if you've heard of that from the States, but it began with a guy who moved from one state to another with his family. He went and got a small truck to do it. And when he got to his new place, he decided, oh, I'll just rent the truck out. And he went down to the local garage, did a deal with the local garage, and they rented the truck out, and he just got the money. Now, the business was so successful, he went from 1 truck to 16 trucks within the space of a year. And now it's almost $1 billion business and still going strong. But he never, ever had that in mind when he set out to do it. And I'll show you what the principles were that allowed that to happen. Just a couple of stories, just in terms of how this works in reality and what I've seen. So this young guy here, Aaron Rice, is a friend of mine that I met when I was traveling in Bali as a digital nomad. He started his very first business at 11 years old. and he borrowed 24 quid from his mum and dad to buy a domain for a website that he wanted to start. Within 14 years, he's now sold multiple 7-figure businesses, and he never borrowed any more than his 24 quid. So he's done it all out of just following this entrepreneurial method. So he went from a small business where he had about 10 different websites that he was doing. He identified what was the topics and the websites that were doing the best. He put more into them. He killed the ones that weren't working. And that's been his process all the way through. He's always had 5 to 10 different things on the go at any one time. See what works, that which works, do more, and narrow it down and just start putting more focus into the things that work. So within, like I say, within 14 years, he'd turned that $24 into multiple millions, and he's never worked more than 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And in the last 10 years, he's traveled to 46 countries. So it's just a reminder, when you use a principle like this, that you don't have to build a business the old hard way, and you've got to be open to opportunities and seeing them as they come along. You don't know how it's going to end up. You just start. So his core principles was start small, never risk more than you're willing to lose, try a few different things. He started off that 1 in every 10 of the things that he tried worked, and he's now, after experience, got to 6 out of everything that he tries works. So there's nothing stopping you from testing the market with 2 or 3 different ventures at the same time, if there's not a lot at risk in terms of time or money in doing it. Don't be afraid to have to commit to one thing right at the very beginning. He's always looked for leverage, so he's become very, very talented at using freelancers from Upwork and that sort of thing, which I've just hired one today to do some social media stuff for me for $6 an hour, which it's about 150 New Zealand in here, so can save me a lot of money. He always believed in treat people well, be adaptable to change. He certainly had some challenges along the way, and he views them as an opportunity to grow and learn and sometimes pivot. So he thinks it's a bit of a game. So that's one way that he's applied the entrepreneurial method to do that. Slightly different story. Art, who's also a friend of mine's from Holland, had a business there, has now moved to New Zealand. How he started is he had a neighbour that wanted a ditch dug when he was 16 years old. The job was worth about $5,000, and Art found a tractor that he could buy for $3,000, went to his neighbour and said, I'll do it for you. Got the job, went and bought the $3,000 tractor, and that's how he got started. So his attitude in terms of how he employed the entrepreneurial method was every tender or job that he saw come up in that area, he found out what it was that they were looking to pay. He went and basically, if he thought he could have a full payback in the period of that job, he would put a tender in, he would go out and buy the equipment once he got the job, and over the space of 20 years, he built it to a multi-million-dollar business with 43 diggers, which is something that he never actually set out to do, and retired in his 40s. So the principles, again, start small, never risk more than you're willing to lose, say yes to anything that's a possibility, then figure it out. Do a good job, keep promises, look after customers, be adaptable and open to change. So I think there are a couple of good stories in terms of how this entrepreneurial method works in terms of just getting started. Has anybody got any questions so far? No? Okay, I'll carry on. So the principles behind this entrepreneurial method, principle number 1 is called the bird in the hand. Now, this is a mistake that a lot of people make when they're starting a business, is they focus on their goals. The entrepreneurial method flips it totally and says we're going to focus on the means, not on the goals. What do we mean by that? What are the skills, knowledge, and relationships that you already have at hand or have they're able to use? Because that's your starting point. That's your launch pad. That's where you know what your minimal viable product is. Now, all we mean by a minimal viable product is there one small thing you can produce or come up with now that you could even sell to one customer with very little expense or time? that you can test the market with. It's a mistake to go away and actually create anything from scratch in isolation from your customers and spend years doing it and assume that you know what the customer wants. And then what happens if you do that is your product hits the market and customers go, no, I don't want that. And you've wasted years and a lot of money. So this process allows you to start small, come up with a minimal viable product. You get feedback from your customer right from day one. It allows you to pivot and adjust as you're going. So an example there, Sarah's a baker known for exquisite wedding cakes, faced a downturn in bookings during the pandemic. Instead of panicking, she used her bird in the hand, her baking expertise and loyal customer base to pivot to smaller celebratory treats for home gatherings. That not only kept her afloat, but also opened up a whole new revenue stream to her. So the key point there is focus on your means. Start with, what have I got? Who am I? What do I know? Who do I know? And how do I combine that to provide a market need? That's the bird in the hand principle. Again, here's a few questions for you when you're working back through it later. What skills do I have? What do I know? What resources are at my disposal? Who do I already know who can open doors for me? What networks do I have access to? A good example there is I've just partnered with a health organisation that's got 1,500 members that have put me in front of all of their members in the space of 1 week at no cost to me. Now, if I was to try to connect with those 1,500 people all at once, or organically over time, I should say, it would take me years to do it. So don't underestimate the value of a really good connection. Somebody that owns a business, somebody that can open the door to a large number of potential customers, possibly an influencer. So I would say, really, that's one of the best things that you can do to identify where is my opportunity. It's, where is the journey the easiest and the path well laid already to begin with. Another thing that a lot of people starting businesses make the mistake with is they get fixated on what are the gains that they want. The most successful entrepreneurs, again, have flipped that on their head and they've gone, what am I willing to lose? Am I willing to lose 3 months of income? Am I willing to lose $100,000 worth of savings to buy a business? What am I willing to lose? So if you put the focus on that rather than the gains, then that means that you're not going to have a failure that's going to sink you. And it allows you to set realistic boundaries and allows you to experiment without that fear of crippling failure. So an example of how that might work, David, a tech entrepreneur, had a revolutionary app idea but lacked funding for a grand launch. He adopted the affordable loss principle, testing his app with a small group of early adopters. The feedback he received allowed him to refine his product and secure investment for a more targeted launch, minimising potential losses. So again, the core point there, focus on what am I willing to actually invest in this? What am I willing to lose? Not on what's the potential upside, because that could potentially sink you. The next principle in this entrepreneurial method is called the lemonade principle. And it's about how do we turn setbacks into opportunities. Now, this is one of the ways that a lot of businesses pivot. They might start somewhere with an idea that they thought that they were going to. Something unexpected happens and it sends them down a different direction. So you could start with one business and then find out that actually a door is closed here and another one is open there. That's the lemonade principle in action. It allows you to pivot down a slightly different direction. So when you embrace this principle, it allows you to embrace surprises, turn setbacks into opportunities, and see unexpected events as data points guiding you towards new paths. So an example of this, restaurant with a power outage couldn't use their ovens. Instead of shutting down for the night, they improvised, grilling food on makeshift outdoor grills and offering a flashlight feast experience. This unexpected twist not only kept them operational, but also generated positive buzz and customer loyalty and brought new customers in the door. So in this regard, it's an attitude, but it's also a don't be too fixated on what your business is. Be willing to allow it to pivot from where you start from.
Hey, Lisa, is that the when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade?
Absolutely, 100%.
I thought I'd heard that before.
Yeah. So, and it's true, but it does take a particular mindset to be able to see it like that rather than to wallow in tears for a while.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to pick up on the whole power of networks and partnerships, and it's an area when you're going through the workbook to really pay solid attention to, because this is the door that can get you up and running so quickly. And, you know, if you've got an income that you've got to replace pretty quickly, a partnership is perhaps the easiest, lowest risk way to actually do that. So don't go it alone. Build alliances with others who share your values and goals. Their resources and perspectives can unlock new possibilities. There is an example there, but I'm going to give you a different one, which is one that's actually just happened to me this week, actually. I wanted to come up with something that was a very unique experience that was a bit different in the marketplace, but I couldn't do it on my own. I wanted to create a business growth sort of game where business owners could come to for a half a day, learn all the best business growth principles, figure out what they could do in the next 30 days in their business, come up with a plan, go do it. Now, I'm not good on the numbers side of things. That's not my strength. So I've partnered with an accountant who she contributes to where I'm weak. I've got skills that contribute to where she's weak, and we can leverage both of our customer bases and networks to actually make it a success. So it's not something I would have done on my own, but by partnering up with someone else, it gives me ready access to an audience that I never would have had otherwise. So I really can't stress too much how much that power of partnerships is so helpful. And the last one I'm going to focus on here in terms of the entrepreneurial method is controlling the controllables. So when we're in this space of building a business, it's not smooth, it's not easy. If you think it's going to be a hell of a shock for you. The core thing is to go, what can I actually control? What are the areas I can have direct influence on? And they typically tend to be things like your effort, your commitment, your attitude, and your decision making. So this empowers you to take action, even in uncertain situations. So when you're actually coming up with what's the business idea that you want to work on, think about maybe where are there the least uncontrollables and where is there the most opportunity for you to control as much as you can while allowing the universe to change around you. So here's an example of what you can do in terms of controlling the controllables. A travel agency facing travel restrictions shifted its focus to virtual tours and cultural experiences. They partnered with local guides and artists to offer immersive online experiences, keeping their customers engaged and building anticipation for future travel. So when you're coming up with your business idea, possibly even think, try and anticipate what are some of the things that might happen and build your mindset to be able to handle it and take advantage of it and turn it into one of those lemonade principle situations. So once you've got clear on what you want, who you are, what you have, and where you're starting from, then we start to look at the outside world in terms of the market opportunity. So the three things that you're looking for when you're deciding what business idea to pick up and run with is, one, you're wanting to look to solve a problem that somebody has and that they're actively searching for the solution. If you're trying to sell them something that you hope they might want or that you think might be useful to them, but if it's not in their top three priorities, they don't have the bandwidth to even consider it. They probably haven't got the budget. Their focus is on other things. So you really want to identify when you're coming up with your business idea, what problem does it solve for who? And how do I know that they're actually searching for a solution? And I'll show you a little bit about how you can do that in a minute. You also want to know that they're willing to pay, and especially if you've got a minimum amount and you're not, you haven't got a lot of flexibility in that. An example there, I've been working with the health practitioners I mentioned before, very altruistic people, very generous people, but they haven't been charging enough people for their services, and so they're on the verge of closing up their business and going finding jobs as receptionists and admin people despite their talent. And that's because, one, they haven't found an audience that's actually willing and able to pay. I should have put that in there as well. And another element which I do want to speak to for a moment, which I haven't included here, is you need to know your worth. You need to be willing to allow people to pay you the money that you're worth as well. So it's not just that your customers are willing and able to pay, it's also that you're willing to receive it. And that's a stranger thing than you would possibly imagine, a lot more widespread than you think. The third part of that market opportunity is, and can you potentially solve that problem for a customer better than anyone else? What can you do that's more efficient, that's more human, more personal, some way that's a uniqueness that beats the people that are already operating in that market? Or maybe there's low competition, so that's not even a big issue to begin with. So they're the three criteria that you want to look for when you're assessing what's my market opportunity. So 5 ways to identify opportunities. Once you've got that insight in terms of, I know what I'm looking for in terms of this business needs to do this, this, and this for me, and I know what I can bring to it, then we're out talking to people. We're out listening to shopkeepers, community leaders, businesses, residents. If you're actually looking at a local business, this is particularly important. If you're looking at something that's, maybe a remote service or digital service or something like that, then you still want to be talking to people, but they'll be the people that are in the environment that you're actually looking to service. Join relevant groups, business associations, hobby clubs, online forums. The chatter that you'll get from that and what you'll hear will definitely point you in the right direction. And sort of aligned with that is monitor and use local news and social media, identify trending topics and concerns. So as an example, if you're doing something in the interior decorating space, pay attention on the community pages and Facebook and that sort of thing to what services are people looking for, asking about who's the best person to provide service here, find out what people are saying they do and don't like about them, their difficulty in getting people. Just be in that space and listen to the chatter that's going on around you. The next part, this is not so much part of the entrepreneurial method in general, but I still think it's very, very important, and that is use data. There's a tool called Google Trends, which I don't know if you've heard about, but you can go online, use it for free. Just there's a link there, or you can just Google Trends. And it will tell you, like in New Zealand or Australia or different provinces within New Zealand or whatever, what are the words and topics that are trending, where there's a lot of conversation, a lot of growth. It won't give you actual volume. It won't give you it won't give you volume, but it will give you a score out of 100 in terms of, is this a very trending topic at the moment or is it declining? And you probably don't want to be going into a declining market, especially with the market getting tighter. Facebook Audience Insights is another one, and you can Google how to find that and use it to your advantage, but it can provide you with the demographics of people that might have particular interests, hobbies, all of those sort of things to help you get some insights. There are free reports everywhere from local government and government data, Statistics New Zealand and whatever else, that will tell you how many people in a particular industry in a particular area and all of those sort of things, so you can get some feeling for that as well. One of the tools I quite like to use is called Google Keyword Planner, or there's also WordStream and a few other free keyword tools. Don't know how much you know about that. So basically, if I go into one of those tools, I can put in what I think people might be searching for that fits my skills, abilities, and talents, and I can see where the volumes are, how big are the volumes, and how much competition is there in terms of that market. So ideally, in terms of keywords, I'm looking at where is there a high volume of searches and a low competition, or maybe the competition, I've identified who they are, and I know I can do a better job than them. And whichever path you come to, once you've got some clarity on who you think your ideal customer would be, do your best to try to put yourself in their shoes, understand their desires, their frustrations, their aspirations, identify inefficiencies and gaps. The more you can do that, the more you will actually go, this is what they need, that's the business I need to start. And a very good tool to do that is called a customer avatar. And you can even use something like the AI tools like Bard or ChatGPT to type questions in, and they will give you some answers in terms of what that customer type is looking for, what their frustrations are, and ways that you might be able to connect with them. So don't underestimate the power of AI to point you in a direction as well. So there's 5 ways to identify potential opportunities. So what do you do next? Okay, so I'll be sending you through the workbook that we've just gone through with all of the slides and those pages in there to do. So go through them, answer all of those questions, and try and get some clarity of where you think your sweet spot is, what are the skills and talents that you are most able to use that are valuable, that people are looking for, and identify those gaps in terms of how can you put them into the market in the right place in the right way. Use these as the foundations to gain clarity on what business would be brilliant for you. Decide what a minimal viable product is. And by that, it's as simple as what's something I could do today to try and actually get my first customer. Because if I can give them something today that gets my first customer, that is the best proof that I'm onto something good that I could possibly have. If you were thinking of starting a lawn mowing business, it might be just a cheap lawnmower to get out and actually just get my first couple of jobs. And I can always up it from there. So just come up, what is that potential minimal viable product? There's a thing in marketing which we call lead magnets, which you can make a document as an example, Heather, for interior decorating. If there was a particular thing that you thought people were having a lot of frustration or challenge around, you could create a lead magnet that was a guide to help them figure that out, stick it out on social media and see what people actually want it, download it, start building a database that way, and start getting a feel for what is the service that they're actually looking for. The most important thing is you're not going to come up with your business idea in isolation or know what to launch with in isolation. Get out of the building. What we mean by that is get out of your own head, get out of your own space, and be in as many places as you can possibly be where the people who are your customers or could be your customers are hanging out, because they will actually tell you quite happily what it is that they need. And that's the very best form of getting a business started you can possibly do. And then be willing to adapt and tweak until you know that you're on the right track, and constantly be going through that process. You know, set it in the calendar every month. Okay, what are the connections I have that I'm not using? What are the skills I have that I'm not using? What are the resources I have that I'm not using? And if you're looking for that every month, you'll be able to grow exponentially over time if that's what you want. So the bonus content I mentioned is the business formula that I think everybody should know. Now, the reason I'm including this here is because you can use it to reverse engineer how you could possibly achieve your financial goals with your business. So be ready for the numbers. It's about to come up. So the way this works, if I say terms like leads, conversion rate, frequency of transaction, average dollar sale, and profit margin, are you all familiar with those terms, or do you want me to go into it?
I'm just
What's that?
I'm just reading them, Lisa. You can, I basically get it, but if you want to just brush stroke over them, that's cool too.
I'll go through it real quick. Okay, so let's use this as an example. Say somebody's looking at possibly getting into a hairdressing practice. and say they're wanting to make 100,000 a year in terms of their profit, they can work backwards from that and go, okay, to do that, assuming that 25% of the people who I connect with or inquire purchase, I would need 1,000 people or 1,000 leads converting at 25% to give me 250 customers. I know on average that most people get 8 haircuts a year, so that's a frequency of transaction of 8 purchases a year, and that the average dollar sale is, say, $90 per visit. So if I had 250 customers coming 8 times a year, paying $90 on average for each purchase, my turnover in the year would be $180,000. If my profit margin is 60%, I've got my $108,000. Now, this will help you figure out, is what you're thinking of doing viable or is it not? But the power of compounding comes in here, and it's pretty exciting. So if I can increase each of these inputs by just 10%, I can actually increase my bottom line by 64%. So it's compounding. So essentially, any one of these things that you can improve, tweak, work on over time, you're going to start to get exponential growth in your business. But it's a really good way to start with, okay, so what do I want to start with in terms of an income in my first year? Now, you know, if I'm targeting people that are wanting their hair coloured in a particular region, do these numbers make sense? Is it even possible? And that will soon filter out some of the things that are and aren't viable for you. So that's why I've covered the business chassis there. So if you're wanting to go into more depth, if you're wanting to actually, you know, if you've got something that you're wanting to start, I do have a small business accelerator coming up. It's starting on the 1st of Feb, basically over 6 weeks, live online program with 8 awesome webinars, weekly actions, cheat sheets, tips, tools, accountability coaching, and community, all for $129 with a 200% money back guarantee. But you're probably not at point yet. If you are, by all means, flick me a note and I can talk you through and see if it would be right for you.